Is Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor bigger than Conor versus Floyd? What do you think? My guess is that you likely laughed when I asked that and quickly dismissed it, and now you're already catching yourself and thinking. And my guess is that's happened to you because exactly what happened to me when my partner Ryan just asked me that question. No, hell no. Not even close. Well, Jake Paul's got a way to push buttons. Ways that Floyd does not. That whole fight of Conor versus Floyd was around the circus. It was around the attraction. It was never about a fight. You could not compare resumes of a 6-time world champion against a guy who had never done the sport. Could not compare resumes about a guy who's going for 50-0 versus a guy whose record is 0-0. It was about something else. And we loved it. And you can't get away with that very often. That is not a sustainable model. You cannot do that Saturday after Saturday. Years have to go by. Things have to come together. I mean, Jake Paul and Conor McGregor just went at it on social media. Conor dismissed him, told him he's a flop, told him how bad his numbers were. Jake Paul came in and told Conor McGregor, if you want to go net worth with me, I will SHIT all over you. And I only bring that to you because nobody's ever pulled the money card on Conor McGregor. That's never been done. It was very interesting. If Jake goes out and Jake gets a win over Rahman, what does it mean for him? We don't really know who Rahman Jr. is, do we, guys? But we're starting to learn. And those guys are getting our attention. And Rahman Jr. does represent the one thing that people are refusing to give Jake Paul his credit for. He does represent that. He's got the youthfulness and he's a boxer. That's all anybody has ever said. Give me a guy who's not over the hill, who boxes. That's what they're doing. Jake Paul's going off as the favorite. Now, Rahman has dismissed Jake Paul. Rahman has taken this from the same standpoint that every other boxer has ever taken Jake Paul, which is you suck, you're not real, I am, and I'm going to show you what's up. There's a big difference between us. Jake Paul asked him to bet on that. Now, I get it. Rahman passed on the bet, said, I don't bet money, I'm not going to do it. I like that. In all fair, I want Rahman to keep this money. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I want him to make all of the right moves. The mere fact that he's passing and not getting goaded into that, I thought it was a good sign. But it does represent something, doesn't it, guys? Jake Paul is not asking to bet $500,000 with you, which was the number he threw out with Rahman. He's not asking to do that for the money. He's asking to do it to call Rahman out on how he really feels inside. If you truly believe I don't belong, if you truly believe my skills don't represent, if you truly believe that your experience in this trumps what I'm going to bring to the ring, then you would bet me. That's the point. And when Rahman did turn that down, he did reveal just how much he really does believe that stuff, which apparently is not very much. You want to speak about betting, DraftKings is already carrying a line. They got Jake Paul as a favorite. It's ever so slight. But these are very interesting things, right? Because I'm not here to talk to you about Jake Paul versus Rahman. I'm here to talk to you about a possible match with Conor McGregor and Jake Paul. What that would be about and how that would look. Conor McGregor's looking big and puffy, and, he can get up to 170 pounds. He can probably get up to 174, 175 pounds. I know you're saying Chael's been 190. Yeah, but that's not training. If you're training, you're doing everything right, you can still only be so big. Conor could get to that. Jake's going to have a meaningful advantage on him. And if Jake comes in with a win over an actual boxer, which is what you guys have decided Rahman is. You decided Rahman met that criteria until he signed to fight Jake Paul, then all of a sudden he's not the representative. I get that. But Jake would be in a very different spot. You guys would look at him very differently. If Jake Paul could somehow become the favorite over Conor McGregor, that fight becomes that much more massive. When you have a huge star with Conor McGregor, people will pay to see you embarrassed. If you have a guy where everything's going great in life, everything this guy's Midas, everything he touches turns to gold, and you have an opportunity to see that person embarrassed, you'll pay to see it. And if Conor was to lose to Jake Paul, the Disney kid, the YouTube kid, the guy that's only had 4 or 5 times in the ring, you're a multiple-time world champion. If we were facing that as the public, we thought that was going to happen, it's going to make it that much bigger. And I don't know how big I am on that fight's going to happen, but Jake Paul has gone after Conor McGregor from day one. The very first time Jake Paul talked about putting on gloves and grabbed a microphone, he went after Conor McGregor. And he hid nothing. This back when Conor's like a 45, 55 pounder. He didn't hide it. Said, yeah, I'm a lot bigger than this guy. That's still the guy. That's my guy. I'm just asking you a fun question. I don't know that we're going to be confronted with this. I'm not predicting that for you, but I am asking you a fun question. Would Jake Paul versus Conor be bigger than Conor versus Floyd? And I think we have pretty short-term memories. Like that Conor versus Floyd business was something special at that time. Don't forget, those guys sold out 4 arenas on 2 different continents to watch a press conference. They sold out 4 press conferences, right? Like that was something interesting, but that also represents, it was about something different. And Floyd did not do his job there. Floyd was beat. Floyd went up there, he stood there, put the sunglasses on, he tried to look cool, and he took the lumps in exchange for a big, glorious moment, a payday down the road. That just isn't what Paul would do. Those press conferences that filled up to see those guys go back and forth, they end up seeing a Conor show. What if it was 50-50? What if Jake was pushing those buttons? Jake had a great line. When Jake was trying to bet Rahman, he started with the money, and Rahman said, I don't bet money. So Jake came back with something else. And don't forget, Rahman is second generation. His pops was a fighter. I think his pops was champion. I think Rahman Sr. was even a champion at one point, but second generation guy. Jake says, if I beat you, right? Remember the bet he did with Tyron Woodley? I think Tyron had to put, I love Jake Paul, if I remember right, but a tattoo. So Jake took that same thing. He said, if I beat you, you change your Instagram for 1 month to I disappointed my father. Now, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal that he invoked that card. It's a big deal that he called that out. Hey, you're a second generation guy. You woke up a boxer. I switched to it 3 years ago. I mean, it's a big deal. It was a big point by him. I mean, I think Jake is going to make this work with Rahman. I feel this has already started. 1 week ago when I didn't know who Rahman was, I had absolutely no interest in this fight. 2 weeks ago, when it was supposed to be Jake versus Fury, I had absolutely no interest in this fight. That has changed. It really has. And it's changed because of Jake. So I'm just asking you to observe it and then do a make-believe comparison in your head. Jake versus Conor, but change the scenario just slightly, which is Jake beats Rahman. So Jake does get more credit. And all of a sudden, Jake, hey, could he beat Conor McGregor? Hey, could he knock Conor out? All of a sudden, you start asking yourself these questions. Well, you know, Conor's not really in great shape, and he hasn't done this a whole lot. He's been out with an injury. You start asking yourself these questions. And if you eventually, and I mean society as a whole, comes to a conclusion that the rich guy who everything goes right in his life is going to face embarrassment, that draws. And I'd like to hear what you think. You got to use your imagination. Could Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor be bigger than Floyd versus Conor?